Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking with Gregory Singleton, owner and attorney at Signature Law based in Minneapolis, where they serve clients in the areas of estate planning, probate, and civil law. Gregory and his firm excel in the area of positioning themselves in front of the right audience and making sure that they are represented with integrity across all channels. Gregory, thanks again for joining us on the Lawsome Podcast. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Let's jump right in. The first question I want to ask, just starting with your background, you described yourself as a recovering commercial litigator. Explain that.
I think the better way to put it is I'm an accidental litigator. Before law school, I actually worked as an actor for 10 years. I was off Broadway. I did some indie film. I did some TV. I was moderately successful. I did okay. But I supported myself. I'm an absolutely terrible bartender and waiter. And so I supported myself in the corporate world. When I was in New York, the last 4 years, I was working to negotiate and draft multi-million and multi-billion dollar contracts with a degree in drama, which was great. But I luckily had a whole host of attorneys that oversaw my work. And as far as I know, those contracts are still going on. Well, I haven't been subpoenaed to explain them in court yet, so they must be doing fine. When I went to law school, my goal was to do transactional work and estate planning, and it was one area of law that I was looking at. But when I got to law school, I was age 30. I didn't fit the mold of most people that were in law school. It was a terrible job market. We were just coming out of the 2008 recession. I was seeing a lot of people that had just graduated, didn't have jobs or didn't have jobs they wanted. And what people told me is you got a background in acting, so you should become a litigator. And I thought that's a great idea. I've seen a lot of movies with litigators. They sound like they're fun. So I took mock trial, I took evidence, I studied to be a litigator, and I got a job as a litigator. And for 6 or 7 years, I wore the three-piece suits. I did trials. I did tons of hearings. And honestly, I hated it. And I really didn't like myself in that practice. I don't like arguing all the time. I'm a lawyer that doesn't like arguing. That's a rarity, I guess. But I also didn't really like the games that are played in litigation. It's part of the system. It's a self-regulating system. Courts don't have the time or desire or resources to really regulate discovery disputes and stuff. So kind of the game is to see how much you can get away with and push it without getting a motion to compel. And I like solving problems. I like seeing a puzzle, working the problem collaboratively with someone.
And what exactly brought you back to you mentioned you had estate planning interest. So was there something that sparked that? What drove you back to that direction?
Yeah, well, two things really. One is when I was getting towards the end of my litigation, or actually getting to the point that I had to make the decision to do something else, otherwise I would have been just incredibly unhappy. I started interviewing attorneys, and I talked to a lot of people in the estate planning and probate bar here in Minnesota, and they were absolutely wonderful. Just really open, totally answering all my questions, very encouraging. And I was sitting here thinking, I'm going to be your competitor. And they just responded, there's enough work for everyone. You're going to do your own thing and don't worry about it. And they were wonderful. The second thing actually happened during law school was my grandfather died. He died while I think it was a 1L. And we learned pretty quickly that his estate was set up poorly. And it was the trust, the revocable living trust, was administered horrifically, and it turned into this inner family fight. There are people in my family I'll probably never get to speak to again. I wasn't at the forefront of this fight. I'm more collateral damage, but I just don't want anyone to go through what my family did. So, when I was applying for jobs, eventually I settled on estate planning and probate. But it's really hard to get a job in estate planning and probate if you don't have experience, even though I was willing to start right at the bottom. But when I said that, people would say, you got too much experience as a litigator, so we can't take you. So at some point, I just said, I'm kind of done asking for permission. I took a couple years, studied what I needed to study, got everything ready to go. And when I took the leap, I just did it. And it was the best decision of my life.
Do you consider this area of law a passion? Have you found it as a passion as you've gotten into it, or can you speak to that?
Oh, absolutely. It hits on all of the things I really enjoy. That I love sitting down with a client, learning about them, learning about their life, learning about their goals and their strategies and what they want their legacy to be, and then putting together the pieces of the puzzle and finding out how we can make the law fit with what they need. And it totally it feeds what I'm looking for when I went to law school. Yeah, it's fantastic. And in the arts, one of the core trainings is that no matter what your role is, no matter what your character is, you need to find a way to be emotionally connected to your role or character. So I got that drilled into my head for many, many, many years. In the law, attorneys are often praised for disconnecting. It's necessary in many ways to have a disconnect from your client, and it just was not what I was trained to do. As a litigator, I always got too personally invested in my litigation matters, and then if something went wrong, I was just devastated. In estate planning and probate, I can get totally invested and really involved with my clients, and I love it.
I love hearing that. And I know your clients, especially kind of, let's say your first time consultations, I know they see that. They can experience that. You can tell that, the key differentiators there from one person to the next when they exude passion. So I love hearing that. Do you think that, you've kind of alluded to this, but your experience obviously in art, in drama, and then going into legal gives you somewhat of a unique angle, I would say, especially the experiences in the background that have led you to this point. How does that work into the initial first consults with first time prospective clients?
Yeah, I think two of the key skills that you get in the arts, especially what I worked on, which was a lot of Shakespeare, was first of all, really tight and careful analysis of language. That's when most people think when you get a play, you just start or a script, you just start memorizing and you start trying to play and imagining. But most people, when they get a script, they go to the library. The good actors do, and they work the paperwork and do that. And being able to inherently just do that skill that is drilled into you in law school, it really helped me out. But I think the more important one that helps me in estate planning is when you get down to it, most arts, and especially the theater and film, are about telling a story. And that's all I'm trying to do, is just tell the continuation of the story of what's going to happen after they die, so that what they want their legacy to be is what happens.
That's powerful. It positions you really well too. One, your experience, your firsthand experience, and the controversy your family unfortunately went through, and you were obviously not alone. I think many listeners are likely resonating with that, because it seems like we all have one of those stories, and yet we continue to make the same mistakes across the country with respect to proper estate planning. But going back to the positioning itself, I really want to drill into this particular area. You obviously have a tremendous background in that, which has led to what I believe is a really good story to tell prospective clients, and to be, it's authentic. And it's clear too, to pivot a little bit, it's clear you've invested time and energy into producing video content, which is another great angle to be able to tell the story, to humanize you as the attorney, and to be authentic, just as we've talked about. You've done an incredible job with the YouTube channel, by the way, and you continue to produce ongoing content that's hitting on unique, what I would consider more question-oriented topics, things that are kind of going through the minds of individuals who may not even be ready to look for an estate planning lawyer. So let's go into that area. Would you mind telling me a little bit about your approach and what you're doing there?
When I was starting Signature Law, I was very invested on trying to figure out how to market it. I'm one of those people that love the business of law, the marketing, the administration, that stuff. I think it's fun. It's fascinating. I went to a seminar on marketing, and they were talking about YouTube channels. Or this is specifically for attorneys, and they basically said that when people want to learn something these days, they go to YouTube. They don't want to read. They just want a video to be in front of them. They told the story of a woman who built this, I think it was a 4-bedroom house from scratch with no experience, by going to videos on how to pour a foundation, how to build a wall. We fixed our dishwasher the other week. I don't know how to fix a dishwasher, but we found a guy that walked us through all the steps, and it was great. Attorneys need to take advantage of this. It's one way to be a thought leader that actually connects with people. When I was starting out with my videos, I was trying to find out what other people were doing online on YouTube with estate planning and probate. And there's really two types of videos. Well, first of all, there are no probate videos. There are none. It is uncharted territory. I'm actually this last weekend I was shooting the first couple of videos of a series I'm going to be doing on probate. It's a big mystery for people, and I think people would like to know. But for estate planning, there's basically two types of videos. The first is a marketing video, and they are a dime a dozen. It's a cursory discussion of a legal topic. It's usually about revocable living trusts. They don't go into a lot of detail. They don't talk the strategy. You can't really apply it to your circumstances. It basically has a message of get yourself a revocable living trust. And honestly, I find that uninteresting and unhelpful to people. But the second type is the educational video. And there's very few people that are really doing a deep dive into the topics, which first of all is what interests me. I would get bored if I was just pumping out marketing videos. But I think people want to know about this. I think there's one guy that I can think of out there that's doing it. He's in Louisiana. I think his name's Rabelais. He's amazing. And luckily, he's doing Louisiana law. So when I started, there was nobody doing Minnesota law. So, and I watch all his videos. He's fantastic. No, I don't have the best production value. I don't have the best lights or sound or camera or anything. And honestly, I've never liked doing film as an actor. I'm not the most photogenic, but I'm enjoying doing these videos, so it's been good.
Well, so how is educating, and you use that term, which I love, and I agree. I think that's an effective form of media, which we've used for years effectively with our agency at ConsultWebs. But how have you found educating clients through the use of video has supported your overall firm's culture or your values before people have even walked in the office to meet you?
The videos are a phenomenal tool for a couple different reasons. The first one is being just the reality that we're in COVID. In the long past, people would go to an attorney that they thought was the biggest shark in the business. They look for the three-piece suit, the shiny shoes, the big office downtown with the view, and that was what they wanted, and they were happy with that, and that was kind of the end of the story. Today, people don't necessarily care about that. They want to see an attorney that is a human, that is a person that is listening to them, that is actually caring about what they are doing. And in the age of COVID, I can't do that for the first meeting. I can't just sit down with all my clients. It's just flat out dangerous until we get to the signing, and then you just have to get creative about how you or do it safely. So when someone gives me a call or sends me an email, I'll chat with them on the phone, and then immediately what I do is I send them a number of videos, and we talked about this, this other thing, and here's something that you might want to learn a little bit more about that's interesting. And then they get to see me, it humanizes me, and it makes actual connection, and it locks in the clients a lot faster than anything else I can do. The other things that it does, well, it educates the client. I'm a big fan of the attorney-client relationship being an attorney-client partnership, where the attorney is the specialist on the law, and they know I would hope that they're the specialist on the law, and the client is the specialist on their circumstances. No matter how much we listen, no matter how many notes we take, no matter how many emails we read, no matter how many documents we review, your client is always going to know more about their circumstance. The goal in the partnership is the attorney is trying to bring the law to the client, and the client's bringing their circumstance to the attorney. The more I can educate them, be it with a video or just talking to them, the stronger that partnership is, and it makes a much more, to me, interesting attorney-client relationship and job than not. The other two things that it helps with are it helps me learn. I'm still relatively new to the estate planning, only been doing this for a number of years, and it forces me to go in depth on topics that sometimes people might gloss over, and I think it's fun. I'm a big nerd, so I love just digging into the statutes and the law and talking to people about what's the tricks and the tips for things. And lastly, YouTube is marketing. I mean, I'm not making marketing videos, but I've gotten a couple clients that have perused YouTube and saw my name and watched some videos and gave me a call. Not a lot, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
The big piece I think people get lost in, from my experience, they're looking at it through the lens, just as you say, as a marketing video. And so the objective is, let's get this content out there and ultimately sign a client from it, which is great. I think that's fantastic. But I think what our listeners should hear is just the intentionality behind it and the objective behind it from your standpoint. Because when you position it as, what I'm trying to do is educate prospective clients so they can ultimately make better decisions around this. One, to educate a client, because an educated client often asks better questions, which guides the case even better. There's so many advantages to that angle that hopefully listeners can hear that there's tremendous value just in doing this from the standpoint of priming the market. And certainly there are going to be some beneficial residuals, if you will, that come with that in terms of new clients. But I love that mindset. And I also think another piece that you mentioned, the idea of leveraging this after you've had initial consultations, because you can recycle this content. And a lot of the content you've produced is evergreen, meaning it's going to be relevant, next year just as it is today. And so continuing to use that as new prospective clients come in the door not only helps to position you as a true influencer, around this particular topic and increases trust and credibility, but very likely increases more questions, which could potentially lead to other legal marketing or legal services that you could offer in that process. So I think that's genius, and I'm certain that's going to continue to pay dividends for you. I'm going to take a different angle here, just with respect. I'm curious. You've been clear in terms of creating topical videos. Planning that out, producing content around it. Is there anything else that's in the back of your mind as producing content? Meaning, is there a certain value as a law firm that you're trying to intentionally exude in this video content, or a certain culture or position that you're trying to convey alongside the message? Have you been intentional with that?
I want to demystify the law for a lot of my clients. A lot of clients try to tackle the law and do things themselves, and they screw things up. I had a very interesting case where someone tried to write their own revocable living trust. It was an 80-page monstrosity of a document. I can say this because we had a good laugh about it at the end of it. It was amazing what he pulled online. Absolutely incredible work of art. And at the end of the relationship, we sat down and we talked about some of the things that were going on. And he really appreciated the approach that we actually didn't even use a trust in the end. We took a different strategy that fit more for what he needed. So I love it when my clients are engaged in the law. It's directing them to the right, sometimes the right answer, or to the right question. Like you actually said something that was great, is getting them to ask the better question and getting them to ask the right question. When they do that, they start bringing up those circumstances in their life that are usually really important that they forgot to tell you about, that make a big difference. I've walked into trials, a literal trial, and my client leaned over to me and says, "Hey, we haven't really talked about it yet, but what about this one thing?" And my jaw drops as he tells me what it is, and I immediately walk over to opposing counsel and settle the darn thing. Because if it's the fact that will lose us the case, and then, as is in litigation, the other side probably knows. So had I had that mindset back then, I might have been able to avoid that problem, and I didn't. I think another value and how it comes out in the YouTube videos, I'm not sure. I don't know, but it's very important to me is just integrity. Basically, you've got one reputation in this world, and you got to protect it. Integrity is basically being honest and having strong moral principles, which to me in the world of estate planning translates to being transparent and not hiding the ball from clients. and educating them about what is going on. That's a form of honesty instead of trying to get them to not ask any more questions, because that's the pain of the keister, getting them to ask the right questions. The example of what the opposite of integrity would be in estate planning would be lying to your clients or hiding things from your clients just so you can fit things into a template that you downloaded online somewhere. And if you're lying to your clients, you got some ethical problems. We don't have to go into them, but you've got some real ethical problems that are going to get you in trouble. Um, and I think, and attorneys do hide things from their clients all the time. They don't want to go into it and explain a complicated area of law because it doesn't necessarily matter, but it's a lot of work, and we're billing by the hour and we don't want to do it. But quite frankly, clients know when that's happening and they find it belittling. And it's not good. It doesn't help the partnership that is the attorney-client relationship.
I believe just simply being able to break things down simply. I noted one of your testimonials on your website even mentioned, I love that Gregory took time, to walk me through this process and to simplify it. And that's really what buyers are looking for. The consumer market really just wants to understand and make it as simple as possible. And there are a lot of law firms out there that tend to try to confuse the topic or make it more complicated sometimes than it should be in an effort to position themselves as the savior in that particular need. But I believe that consumers today, in fact, we're seeing it, they want more than that. And you're proving that with the video content. What about tips for our listeners? So with respect to topics, like eventually you run out of topics, right? So what are you drawing on to help kind of facilitate new lists or new ideas to run through?
I sat down one day when I started out and I just brainstormed for hours and I came up with about 150 topics. I only do a video once every other Wednesday. That's going to last me a long time. And the other thing is I've learned is when I hit a topic, so I try to keep the videos 7 to 10 minutes long. I'll hit a topic, and by the time I'm done with it, I'm like, I got to break this into 2 or 3 videos. So I have no concerns about running out of topics. The fun ones are actually when I have a client and they've got a very interesting story, and I get permission for them to say it. Of course, I don't say their name or anything or any identifiers, but and we talk about what happened in their case and why it was interesting and why this might be interesting to other people. So the more I practice, the more things come up, and yeah, no concerns about running out of material.
So when you sat down and put together that 150 list, were you thinking about questions you had heard? What did you draw on in that respect, if you could go back in time there?
Any conversation with a client when I literally just would flip through the statute and say, oh, that's part of it. That's an interesting thing. Breaking down probate is a challenge because everything is interconnected. So trying to find just the little piece throughout of probate as you go through it is it just ends up being more and more topics. And you got to be careful. There's some topics no one cares about. Some things are so esoteric that just I don't even care about it. But maybe if I have a client that has an issue related to it, we can bring it up. But otherwise, you just find out what's going to be interesting.
Good stuff, Gregory. Any other closing thoughts or advice that you'd want to share with our awesome listeners?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about marketing. And this is kind of my big pet peeve about the practice of law. And it is so important. This happens 1 to maybe 3 times a month. Someone will call me up and or send me an email, and we'll have a quick talk. And basically they'll say, look, I'm vetting a number of attorneys right now, and so let's talk. And we figure out a strategy, and we discuss the matter. And then they say, okay, I'm going to go talk to another couple attorneys and I'll get back to you. And a week later, either I reach out to them or they reach out to me, and their response, it doesn't happen every time like this, but is thank you for just being nice, for not being a jerk, for not having ego, for being a human being. We go to law school and we learn how to argue, how to nitpick, how to break things down, how to argue about things that shouldn't be argued about, to be hyper detail oriented. And all these characteristics, while very, very important and useful in the practice of law are the characteristics that people would use to describe a jerk if they're asked in a party to describe what a jerk is. Attorneys need to learn how to turn it off and just have a conversation. I've gotten a lot of business from attorneys that don't know how to do that. I'm not the least expensive person out there. I'm not the most experienced person out there, but I'm still the one that gets the clients. And that's even happening in the Minnesota estate planning and probate bar, which in my experience is a phenomenal group of people who are very, very good at what they do. And they don't turn into that quintessential attorney that we all train to be. But that's my biggest marketing tip in the world, is just find a way to be human, and you will get clients from it.
Gregory, for those trying to reach out to you, what's the best way to contact you?
Send me an email. It's always at the end of all my YouTube videos, or just email Gregory at signaturelawpllc.com. I always answer.
Very good. Thanks again for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Lawsome by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next Lawsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.